Hey there, my name is Drew Brashler, and I want to help you feel more confident with your production gear no matter where you're starting from. Today we're going to be talking about the P16 and how to get that set up on the Behringer X32. So first things first with the Behringer P16 system is that you do need a shielded Cat5 or Cat6 or better network cable. It does have to be shielded to be able to power the unit remotely. Now, I'm going to show you how to get that set up with the Behringer X32, the Behringer P16D, and the Behringer P16-M, which is all of the stuff that you need to get the P16s working at your venue. So let's go ahead and check that out. As for all things with the Behringer X32, they do recommend a shielded network cable, and we just want to plug this into the Ultranet personal monitoring output on the Behringer X32. And then we can move over to our P16D next. So here is the Behringer P16D, and we take our other end of the cable and we plug it into the Ultranet in that's right here. So once we plug that in, we should see an activity light start flashing here. After that, the next thing that we do is we want to plug in our P16M with a shielded Ethernet cable right into any of these ports here. So we have 8 ports here, and if you need to expand more than 8 ports, you can take one of the ports and route it into an Ultranet in on another P16D. We then take the other side of our cable and we plug it into the Ultranet input on the back of the P16M. Once we do that, we can press the on/off button, and then we will see that our lights. One thing to note about the back of the P16M is there is a through on the Ultranet, and you can take this and daisy chain multiple P16Ms, but at that point you would need to apply power to the second and remaining units. And so that's what's so beneficial of the P16D is that we're able to have up to 8 units on each P16D powered over this shielded Ethernet cable. If you need to have more than 8 outputs, we can take one of the Ultranet outputs and route it into the Ultranet in of a second P16D, and then we can expand to more than just 8. So now that we actually have the Behringer P16M turned on and working, let's actually go ahead and get the routing set up. So I have my Ultranet routing written out right here. We're going to do a very simple setup here of kick out, snare top, rack tom, floor tom, stereo overheads, bass guitar, acoustic guitar, stereo keys, stereo electric, and then 4 vocals. Now I understand that this isn't going to match exactly what you need, but hopefully in this video you will understand how to get your system set up for feeding the Behringer P16s. So here's my board layout. I have kick, snare, rack, tom, floor tom, overheads, bass guitar, acoustic guitar, electric, stereo, keys, stereo, and then my 4 vocals. Now, this is my 16 channels, so this is a very simplified version of this, but let's go ahead and actually get the routing set up for this. So we're going to hit routing, and then we're going to tab with our page select all the way over until we get to P16. And then we're going to see our Ultranet P16 outputs. Now, you may have some information here, and we're just going to save over it. So I have my kick out that needs to be on channel 1 here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to direct out, and I'm going to go and find my kick channel, which my kick channel happens to be channel 1. So we can go direct out of channel 1. Once we have selected that, that would mean that if we have our kick going, that it would show up on the P16s. Now, let me talk about taps real quick. Taps have multiple options that we can select from, and this can select our different amount of processing that we want to send to the P16s. In LC means that that's coming off of the input and low cut only. So that would bypass your gate, dynamics, and EQ. Now we can also see this plus M. Now the plus M means that if I have the kick mic muted, it will not send to the P16s. If we select the input LC without the M, then that would mean that if this was muted, it would still continue to send to the P16s. Now that plus M works in the same way for the rest of them. So pre-EQ means that we would be taking everything before the EQ section. We would have post-EQ, which would mean that we have all the processing until after the EQ. And then we have pre-fader, which means that it's pretty much all of the processing of that channel minus where your fader level is set to. And then we also have post-fader, which means that if I'm adjusting it in the house, it's adjusting it in their ears. Now, we can see that we have the plus M here on all of these. So if you do select a plus M and it is muted, it will not send to their ears. Additionally, with the post fader, if it's muted or turned down, it wouldn't send to their ears either. So the way that I like to set things up is in either post EQ or pre-fader, depending on if you want to have the compression going to your P16s. Now, one thing to note is if you have your dynamic set to pre-EQ and you select post-EQ, your dynamics would still be sent to the P16s. One quick and easy way to see where these tap points are and how they are processing off of your channel is to go and select your kick channel and then hit home, tab over to sends, and then we can see this little diagram at the bottom of our screen. We have in LC, pre-EQ, post-EQ, pre-fader, and post-fader. So let's go ahead and get the rest of the routing set. So we're going to go back to routing. We're on P16. We're doing a direct out of channel 1, and I'm going to go and select pre-fader, but I'm not going to select the plus M because if I'm muting it in the house, I want them to still be able to hear their instruments. Next, we have snare top, so we're going to go to 2. We're going to go to direct out 2 and hit pre-fader. Now, one thing to note about our direct out of channels is this is actually the channel strip. It's a direct out of the channel strip, not the input. So if you do have, say, my snare top coming in on 4, it's still going to be pulling it from the channel, not the input. So I can have it set to input LC in my routing on this snare, but it is coming off of the channel strip. So however complicated your routing setup is, this is coming off the channels, not the inputs. And so that's a big difference because if you had your snare coming in on the back of the board on input 4 on the XLRs, and you actually have this on channel 2, then the P16s are pulling from the channels. Doesn't matter how your routing is set, it's coming from the channels. Let's go ahead and continue to route the rest of them. Channel 3 is going to be our rack, so that's our direct out 3, pre-fader. 4 is floor tom, pre-fader. 5. All right, so quickly scrolling through these, we can see that we have input 1 as kick, snare top, rack, floor, overhead left, overhead right, bass guitar, acoustic guitar, electric guitar left, electric guitar right, keys left, keys right, vocal 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if you are utilizing a Stagebox, say the DL32 from Midas or the S32 from Behringer, we would want to set up our Ultranet routing to feed the P16s to that Stagebox so that if you end up connecting the Ultranet output out of your Stagebox into a P16D, then it would actually be getting the correct channels. So let's go ahead and do that in our routing next. Now we're going to tab over to AES-A output routing because that's where I have my DL32 connected to on my Behringer X32. Our 33 through 48 outputs need to be from P16 1 through 16. By default, it's set to this. But if you have changed this, you will need to set your 33 through 40 as P16 1 through 8, and 41 through 48 as your P16 9 through 16, as this is what is sent to the Ultranet output of your S32 or S16. Next thing, we're going to actually hop over to the P16Ms, and we're going to do a few things of configuration on that unit. So I have my P16M here, and you will need to do this configuration on every P16M that you have. So if you have 4 units, you will have to do this same configuration on all 4 units. If you have 8, you'll need to do it on all 8. So we have our kick out, our snare top, our rack tom, our floor tom, our overhead left and overhead right, bass guitar, acoustic guitar, keys, electric, vocal 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, we can see that overhead left and overhead right are 2 separate things. Now, I'm wanting to go ahead and link these so that it's easy and quick for my band to adjust their mix. So all I have to do is press link, and then I can tap on the odd number. you can only link odd and even. You cannot link an even to odd. So I can't link 6 and 7. I can only link 5 and 6. And so once you have link pressed, you can link whatever channels are stereo and need to be linked together. And then when your musician is adjusting volume or pan, it will adjust both of those accordingly. Now, if you do end up linking a channel, like 9 and 10 being our keys left and right, it will automatically pan them left and right. Once you have those links set, you can just press link. And then you can notice that anytime you hit one of these channels, no matter which button you press, it will select both of them. And then when you adjust it up and down, it'll adjust both the left and the right side at the same time. That's the only configuration that we need to do on the P16. I know that you guys have a lot more complicated setups than this, so in my next video, I'm going to be showing you a little bit of fancy things that we can do on the Behringer X32 to maximize the amount of channels that we can send to the P16M. So thank you so much for watching, and if you do have any questions, feel free to leave some questions in the comments below. I'm always looking for more things to make videos on in my Your Questions series. So thank you so much.